No one answers calls anymore because of the robocall phenomenon, and it's a scam call. How do you get them to interact with your in-app notifications when they ignore everything because they're just used to it? So we find that the answer for that, the way that we're approaching it, is by simply rewarding them every time they do that. So you can get a much higher response rate if you reward somebody for answering your email, if you reward somebody for answering a phone call, for interacting with in-app notification. And that's basically what we do. All we do is take a financial platform and attach it to communications protocols, whether it's emails, phone calls, text messages, WhatsApp, social media direct messages, in-app notifications, you name it, and you can attach a cryptocurrency to it and facilitate transfer of value and messages at the same time.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Crypto Weekly podcast, the show where we interview the top movers and shakers in the crypto industry. Today, I'm joined with Adrian Garcia, the co-founder and CEO of FynCom. Adrian, welcome to the show.
Hey, Mike, super happy to be here. Great way to start my Tuesday morning. Thanks for having me on.
Beautiful. Well, I'm looking forward to chatting with you. You've got a great project that you're working on. Before we get into, FynCom and what you guys are doing, let's start with you. How did you get exposure into the blockchain space, and kind of give me a little bit of your kind of past 5-year journey?
Yeah, so I think it was around 2013 when I first got into Bitcoin and started reading about it on online internet forums. I was about a year into my PhD, and I'm the kind of person who just has a lot of energy and wants to constantly be on the cutting edge of new technology and new knowledge and creating new knowledge. That's why I started the PhD. So, I mean, a PhD is intensive, but you still have like downtime. And I had a lot of downtime in my experiment. I had 10-hour plus experiment while burning materials at 1,000 degrees Celsius, and I had to wait for them to cool down and heat up and all this kind of stuff. So I always had downtime. And I started researching into financial technology because that's part of my hobby as well. I really like fintech stuff. I like sort of bending the rules where I can in regards to that. And Bitcoin just seemed like something that was up and coming and super new and awesome. And I heard about it before, but 2013 was when I really started looking into it and playing around with it. So then from there, I bought some Bitcoin. I bought my first T-shirt, which I still have now. And I got even more into it in 2015. And then around there, I got a little distracted by the PhD and the other things that I had on my plate. So I would say I first got exposed to it in 2011, took it seriously in 2013, and then took it really serious in 2015, and then started doing my own thing in 2017. So I found that it takes, 2 years or so after you hear about it, from my experience, before you really bother learning a little bit about it. And maybe about 4 years from there before you really bother before you start understanding like what it could possibly mean for the future. And then maybe about 5 to 6 years in my experience before you're like, oh, I can do things with it. I can create new things with it. There's more to it than just holding it and hoping that it appreciates in value. I think it takes a long time before it gets to that point. At least it did for me. I don't know about anybody else.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Given the fact that you were in 2013, there had that long learning curve for everybody, just to even understand what type of asset this was, how it was going to act as a store of value or a replacement to gold. And I think we've all kind of been learning that together on our own time, because it is such a new and revolutionary technology. One thing on your PhD, I know it's material science, correct?
Correct.
And I have a little bit of an unorthodox question. Is there anything that you can take from your PhD in material science and bring it into what you're learning about or what you're doing in the cryptocurrency space? And the reason I ask that is because I hear Michael Saylor often talk about Bitcoin as almost like a closed loop circuit where there's no energy lost. And I'm wondering, is there anything else that you can take from this education in material science and bring it in almost as a parallel into the cryptocurrency world?
Several things. Material sciences at its core is the understanding of the fundamental pieces of matter that make up our entire universe and everything that we interact with. So talking about, the individual atoms that make up materials, to how they're structured together, to how you can eventually manipulate them to create everything you see around us. And in that same philosophical sense, the building blocks of any cryptocurrency have to be well understood, and the long-term implications of combining those building blocks together also has to be well understood. And so, yeah, they're philosophically, I think there's a 100% correlation between material sciences and cryptocurrency, but I'm kind of a weirdo fanatic about that. And then, yeah, Michael Saylor, I know that this may not be a great thing to say, but some people like to, and this might be controversial, but that's fine. Compare Bitcoin to gold in terms of its store value. And one of the things that I like about gold is I actually worked with gold. We had a little 1 gram ball of gold that did enough research to power the careers of 3 PhD students from 5 years span of each PhD student. And all we did with that little 1 gram ball of gold is we stuck it in a little capsule, pushed that into an ultra high vacuum chamber, which was just about pretty close to the vacuum of space. And then we would bombard it with electrons so that little pieces of gold come off and cover the surfaces of the material that we were working with. And then we go and take a scanning probe microscope and look at the individual atoms of that. And from there, we can understand how the electronic density is of that. So that's how we were able to sort of create gold-coated nanowires and understand how we can further the electronics industry. What I'm saying is gold has a lot of really interesting useful properties, and it can, create the careers of scientists who will then go on to do their own things in science and contribute more and more and more. So to me, gold has an insane amount of value in it, in its physical properties, because it looks pretty and it's expensive, and you can buy it for a girl and maybe she'll love you forever, maybe she won't. But you can also use it in science, and it's had a lot of really practical uses in science, not just in the research we can do, but in the career that it can create for somebody who goes on to do more amazing things. So when people compare things to gold, I can speak really heavily on that because I did a lot of my research in using gold as well. So yeah, don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, don't get me talking too much about math side, man. You're gonna get me going into all these nerdy areas.
Fair enough. I love it just as much, and I think you're very right that there are still so many use cases of gold. But I think what Bitcoin is taking over from gold is that monetary use case, where gold has so many more use cases in the material world. But anyways, that's a rabbit hole we don't need to go down today.
Sure.
Maybe
I could see that though. I could see that. I do agree in the monetary sense. I could understand how that makes sense. But in the other physical cases of it, it's pretty hard to compare. But I agree on a monetary sense.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's shift conversation a little bit to avoid the rabbit hole. We'll shift back to FynCom and what you guys are doing with FynCom. First of all, let's just explain the company and what you guys are set out to do.
Yeah, so FynCom is all about helping businesses increase their marketing costs effectiveness, increase the effectiveness of their marketing costs. And so at the core of a business is you want to be able to interact with customers and have them talk to you so that you can understand what your customers are feeling and whether they like your newest product. If a customer leaves, you might want to know why they left. Like, are you doing something different that they're not liking? Are you going to alienate the rest of your customer base? And at the core of all that is communication. You need to be able to talk to your customers and have them engage with you. But how do you do that if you're sending out emails to them and it's just one of the 50 emails they're going to get for that day and one of 1,500 they're going to get for the month? How do you call them when they're not answering the phone? Because no one answers calls anymore because of the robocall phenomenon, and it's a scam call. How do you get them to interact with your in-app notifications when they ignore everything because they're just used to it? So we find that the answer for that, the way that we're approaching it, is by simply rewarding them every time they do that. So you can get a much higher response rate if you reward somebody for answering your email, if you reward somebody for answering a phone call, for interacting with in-app notification. And that's basically what we do. All we do is take a financial platform and attach it to communications protocols, whether it's emails, phone calls, text messages, WhatsApp, social media direct messages, in-app notification, you name it, and you can attach a cryptocurrency to it and facilitate transfer of value and messages at the same time. And so that's what we do at FynCom.
Amazing. And this is something that truly just was not possible. These micropayments just were not possible before the advent of cryptocurrency. I noticed that you're using Nano as the cryptocurrency of choice for payments. Can you tell me a little bit about why you chose to use Nano and what the use cases are for that?
Sure. So as an engineer, I take a first principles approach to the way that I integrate technologies into whatever I'm working on. And so this originally started in about 2017 or so. Yeah. Um, I want to say closer to 2000, sorry, closer to 2018. Yeah, at the end of 2018, 2019. I wanted to solve the problem of phone spam calls because I hate getting phone spam calls. It's the worst thing in the world because it's a micro distraction, and you don't really realize how distracted you are because we kind of grew up in the digital ecosystem where distractions are just normal. But when you start to block all those distractions out, at least for me, I found that I was able to get into flow much more easily, like I used to back in the day. Like I used to be able to focus and take long periods of time to be creative and pursue ideas and be able to complete them. And phone spam calls were just the devil to me. They were horrible. And I just wanted to see like, okay, well, why hasn't this problem been solved? And I did a bunch of PhD level research and ultimately came to the conclusion that, hey, it's economic incentives. These guys steal $10 billion a year from everyday Americans year after year, and they never get caught because of jurisdictional challenges. So then I thought, well, how can I use Bitcoin? How can I use Satoshis in this thing? Because I really want that. Like I was really, really into Bitcoin. I loved it. It was the most amazing. And it's just the genesis of it and what it did is still like incredibly amazing to me. So I was thinking of Satoshis at the time. And I just came up with a concept of like, hey, so I want someone to have to pay me when they call me, and I want them to get that money back right away if they were a good caller. So how can I structure something that does that? And I eventually came up with this concept of refundable nano deposits, where someone has to give you 5 cents to ring your phone if they're not on your contact list. And the innovation that I brought to the table, though, was allowing that person to get a refund without you having to decide, think, or press another button. You just hang up. The length of the call time dictates their refund. So calls that last longer than 25 seconds gives them a full refund. Call that shorter than 25 seconds, you keep 80% and we keep 20%. And that was the difference between us and the previous folks who thought of this concept before, like from Cisco Technologies, you had Rosenberg and Jennings to describe this concept as payment at risk way back in, I believe, 2005 or something. And in their paper, they described this is not going to work because of the lack of a proper micro payment platform. So you had PayPal at the time, but they were going to take 2.9% of everything you send, right? So how can you make money on that? And like you said, the advent of cryptocurrencies allowed that to happen. Going back to answer your question, I needed something that could scale. There's about 50 billion scam phone calls in the United States. There's about 100 billion regular phone calls in the United States, probably close to 500 billion, if not a trillion phone calls in the world. So to make my concept come true, you needed to send a payment for every single phone call, send it back for every single good caller, and then not get killed by the fees and have that happen instantaneously in real time. So I looked at all the cryptocurrencies that existed. I said, I need something that fee-free, operates in real time, is scalable, it's easy to use, it has no minimum fees to open a wallet, and attempts to be decentralized. And so those were the criteria that I personally wanted to have in a technology that I was gonna build and expand. Because to me, phone call was just the first thing. It was going to grow into what it is now, which is FynCom. So I needed it to not just address phone calls, but address emails, address text messages, address every digital interaction. So you can imagine using, fee-based blockchain and saturating the level of usage on it so that you end up paying more and more and more fees as it gets more popular. So to me, it didn't make any sense to use a blockchain that would increase in fees as the level of adoption increased, because then it would just cut down on the money that I can make. So that's kind of the way that I approached it. I'm a very pragmatic, like capitalistic kind of person. I call myself a capitalist cypherpunk. I really believe in the concept of, peer-to-peer value transfer and letting people have control over their lives and whatnot. That's kind of it. And I know I said a lot to get to that point, but that's more or less how I got there.
Amen, man. And I think we speak the same language in so many different ways. But I think you're pioneering something so interesting, almost this new generation of consumer engagement. And if we look back in the history of marketing and what it was, consumers are getting they're changing, they're getting smarter, right? And where we first, used to get massive reach and engagement just from a television commercial, now we have to get hyper specific, targeted, exactly what the person wants in order for them to even bat an eye. And so consumers are getting almost inundated with all this content, and we need to get even more hyper specific. And I think the next generation of that is actually compensating consumers, right? Where we've just been essentially taking advantage of consumers just through their information that they don't own. Now, as I said, with the advent of blockchain, we can start to compensate consumers for the value that they're providing us. And I think FynCom's doing an amazing thing to really push that vision forward.
Thank you so much. You're right on the money. That's the exact same way they were approaching it. It's just evolution of consumer engagement. And the wonderful thing about, the cryptocurrency world is that we can achieve that dream of getting people paid for the information they're putting out there, getting people paid for their data. And not only that, but if we do this right, we can give businesses more value with their interaction with people, help them find their product market fit more quickly, help them expand their audiences. The tricky thing about this is creating a way of cultivating the system so that businesses get value and end users get value. That's the really hard thing to do there. But that's what we're trying to do here. And so, yeah, thank you so much for that. That's a major compliment. Appreciate that.
Of course. And I think it's just a natural evolution, because if we look at the way that digital marketing works now online, where it's one-to-one marketing, a lot of companies are now taking the affiliate model, where if money comes in, that's when they pay out money. And I think this is very much the same thing, but from a telecommunications standpoint, is if they get value, they're paying for it, which makes sense, right? But if they're not, then they're refunded. And so I think you're tying these two worlds together very nicely in the way that it should be moving forward in the telecom communications industry. So love what you're doing. I know you guys just closed a pre-seed round, $195,000. What's your plan with that? Tell us a little bit about the round. Tell us a little bit about your investors, and what do you plan to do with the money?
Yeah, so Go Ahead Ventures was the venture capital firm that funded us. And the team there, TK is the guy who we speak to quite often. He is an amazing person, really responsive, really hands-on when we want him to be, but also letting us sort of dictate how we want to use this money to grow the company. And really appreciate Go Ahead for, taking that risk on us. So what we're going to use that money for is for growing out our development team and our business development team. So it's been a pretty small team that's been handling all of the development and business outreach. And it's hard. It's hard to do it like when you have just 3 people that are, more or less full-time working on this with some advisors on the side who help us out every now and then. It's hard. So right now I'm reaching out to some of my close friends who I've spoken with about this in the past before, and hoping to onboard one of them pretty soon, actually. So that's a close friend of mine, actually, who helped me start the cross-country team at UC Merced. Because I really want someone, this is pretty difficult when you're in this world, especially right now, because we're more or less custodial. And so any developer we bring onto the team, we have to 100% trust that they're not going to do anything shady and, steal people's private keys or sniff their wallet IDs and move money around. So right now, our backend is completely shut off from anybody, including the majority of our dev team. So we need to bring on people that we trust until we can get to a point where it is completely decentralized and there's no more control in our hands. So even if we get hacked, no one can hack everyone else's accounts, right? But we're just not there yet. So bringing on people that we can trust, so close friends and trusted colleagues is what we're looking for right now. We currently hired 2 developers from Colombia, and it's kind of changing their entire lives right now. It's pretty awesome to be able to change people's lives by bringing them in to work on something awesome and getting them compensated for it. My co-founder, Christian, is Colombian, so he really wants to help other Colombians. And that's kind of why he's in the picture here, because he really loved the idea of helping out his own people. And he didn't see enough Hispanics and Latinos in tech, and he really had a passion to bring more of those into tech so that, he could help his people. And I really admire that about him. So focused on hiring developers in Colombia, we brought you on. We're bringing on hopefully a close developer friend of mine. And I'm talking to this pretty amazing chief marketing officer guy from the East Coast who that guy's a phenom. I'm really hoping to get him brought on for commission. We've already created some partnerships in Brazil. We have a joint venture firm, actually, a joint venture company out there. We haven't spoken too much about this, but pretty cool. So we have a joint venture firm with a venture capital firm out there. So it's going to be a FynCom Brazil, maybe a different name. I think they're thinking of rebranding it. So they're going to be strictly doing the business development stuff, the outreach, finding customers, bringing them in, and then we provide them the tech platform. We've also got another team in Italy who is pretty interested in using our technology as well. So we're using this money to expand our business technology and get our first customers, bring in that first revenue stream, and just start getting punched in the face by customers until we get it right, basically.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you need to go through that. You need to go through that process. Sorry, I just got a phone call. Yeah, congratulations.
Call, man.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it sounds like you've got such a bright future, and there's a lot going on for the company. This is currently pre-release, right? Like if somebody wanted to get involved in any way, if they wanted to apply for a job, or if they wanted to start potentially using your platform, or even just learn more about it, how would they do so?
Yeah, so you would reach out to me, Adrian at fincom.com. Our contact should also be on the website. Currently, we onboard our enterprises and, you know, SMB, startup, whomever, anyone that wants to start infusing their outbound communication with rewards. We onboard 10 customers a month at this point because we want to take it nice and slow as we grow and be sure that we're giving customers an enjoyable experience and helping them increase their value, helping them increase the number of people they talk to. So yeah, it's a really slow process right now with the white glove onboarding service from the FynCom team. And that's how you would do that.
Amazing. Well, Adrian, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on what you've accomplished thus far with FynCom. And I look forward to seeing how your project scales in the future.
Thanks so much, Mike. Really appreciate that.
Awesome.
Nice talking with you.
You as well.